This is a think-aloud demo with a corresponding comprehension coding that I created using an app called Screenchop. And Screenchop is part of a class of programs, sometimes called interactive whiteboard apps. There are related programs called screencasting apps. And what these enable you to do is essentially the same thing. They all basically do the same thing. They capture your voice narration along with a physical demonstration that you're performing on the computer screen, either through a series of mouse clicks on your computer, or in the case of tablets, something that you're doing with your stylus. In my case, I'm using a stylus, or sometimes just your finger. And these are very inexpensive, sometimes free applications that you can run on your mobile device. And what they enable teachers to do is create an artifact, a little video that they can share with students. And so it's part of that flipped instruction model where you can demo certain things for students to look at and listen to outside of class, and that frees up your instructional time for other activities. And the other advantage is it creates an artifact that students can go back to multiple times and review and watch as many times as needed before they master whatever practice or process it is you're asking them to do. And certainly in math, you can think of a very complicated calculation with many steps, or in the case of English language arts, all the different ways we ask students to manipulate text. In writing, we want students to revise their text and edit it using perhaps different symbols or different markings. And so you can model that. And in reading across the content areas, we want students to take notes on their text, which is basically all that comprehension coding is. It's a very structured way to mark a text that scaffolds students as they're trying to make meaning of complex readings. So this is just a very visual and very interactive way to make that metacognition very explicit. So now I'm going to do the Think Aloud with comprehension codes on the poem Anything Can Happen by Seamus Heaney. Anything can happen. You know how Jupiter will mostly wait for clouds to gather head before he hurls the lightning? Well, I'm going to stop here and make a note of the name Jupiter, which I know from my studies of ancient Greek and Roman mythology. Jupiter is the god of gods, the god of sky, and he's often depicted holding his symbol, the lightning bolt, which the ancients believed he would throw the lightning bolts down to earth whenever he was angered by the mortals. And I'm thinking this is an important detail that might help me understand the rest of this poem. Well, just now he galloped his thunder cart and his horses across a clear blue sky. And that's a really powerful sentence. I'm going to underline it because it gives me a visual. I actually see two things. I see Jupiter throwing down thunderbolts, but I also visualize just a very beautiful, cloudless, sunny day, and then a sudden thunderstorm that rolls in and interrupts that beautiful day. It shook the earth and the clogged under earth, the river Styx, the winding streams, the Atlantic shore itself. And here I see another reference to the Greek mythology, the river Styx, which was a place in the underworld that the dead had to cross over before they could come to their final resting place. And yet I'm confused because that's a mythological location, and yet along with that I have here the Atlantic shore, which is a very real place in the United States as well as on the European continent and elsewhere. It's an actual geographic location. It's not mythological, and that kind of confuses me, and I'm wondering why the poet is doing that. Anything can happen. The tallest towers be overturned, those in high places daunted, those overlooked regarded. Okay, so there's a lot happening here. There's the repetition of anything can happen. which I think is significant. It's not just the title, but it appears twice in the poem. So I'm going to mark that. And then the tallest towers is a significant detail that also invokes in my mind an image, but again, it's not from an ancient time like ancient Greek or Rome. It's making me think of contemporary society and modern cities. And then the word those, which is repeated, is kind of confusing to me. It's an ambiguous pronoun. I don't know who those are. So I'm wondering who was daunted and who was overlooked. Stropped beak fortune swoops, making the air gasp, tearing the crest off one, setting it down bleeding on the next. And here I have another question about the word stropped. I really don't know what that means. I think I'm going to have to go look that word up. But I do see the word beak and the word swoops, which helps me visualize a bird. So I'm thinking stropped must have something to do with the bird. And it's a very powerful bird. So I'm visualizing a bird of prey like an eagle or a hawk. And the images of swooping and tearing and bleeding are very powerful and make me imagine something violent is happening. Ground gives, the heaven's weight lifts up off Atlas like a kettle lid. And that's a really powerful simile. And it works for me. I can visualize something very powerful, an action, a moment that is so strong that it's lifting up something as heavy as the earth. And I know that because of the word Atlas, which is another allusion to the ancient mythology. Atlas was the Titan who was so strong he could carry the weight of the world on his shoulders. Capstones shift, nothing resettles right. Telluric ash and fire spores boil away. And I'm running into another difficult word here that I'm going to have to look up along with stropped. I'm not even sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but it is used along with the word ash and fire and boil. So even though I don't know what telluric means, I'm again visualizing something very powerful, something very violent that has happened, that has left a mark, so that no matter what, things are not going to be the same because there's been a shifting and nothing resettles right. So I'm drawing an inference here about an event that the poet is trying to describe, and whatever that event is was one that changed the world forever. I'm going to stop the Think Aloud now, and you can see that I have scripted it and I've noted it, and I have now an artifact that I can refer back to for different purposes, such as a class discussion or small group discussion, or if I wanted to, I could reread the poem and continue to dig a little deeper into some of my questions, and possibly then do some writing based off my codes and my thinking. So this is an application that you might choose to use in lieu of a traditional paper-based coding. And if you wanted to create a comprehension coding of a content area text using a whiteboard app or a screencasting app, that would be perfectly acceptable for your assignment in 3210. Thanks for listening.